We are in Hosea, and we are in chapter 4 today. Hosea chapter 4. We saw last time we finished up chapter 2 and got through chapter 3. And again, we saw that those first 3 chapters relatively concluded the role that Hosea's immediate life examples were going to be described as, that he was going to then take the lessons that he experienced in what God commanded him to do, to go and take a wife of harlotry, and explain how that is analogous to Israel's adultery, spiritual adultery from their God. But we saw there in chapter 3 that even in spite of this, that Hosea, again, was going to be the picture of God, the good husband who went out and called his wife back, as it says there in verse 14 of chapter 2, allure her, bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her, show mercy to her. And Hosea did this again in chapter 3 of Hosea, that he went and took her, bought her for himself out of harlotry, out of prostitution, and bought her and reestablished that connection with his wife, just as, and this was again a foretelling, that Israel will, even though they are at this time and even today still wayward, apart from God, haven't returned to God. We know that the judgment that we have seen and we're going to see more of spelled out and charged against Israel, that will come in the day of the Lord, the great judgment. That will be a difficult time for Israel, and it will be a difficult time that will spurn them to then return to him, look upon him whom they pierced, and mourn as they mourn for an only son. So we know that day is coming. We know that God is not done with Israel. But nevertheless, here in the book of Hosea, we see that there are many charges, many reasons that Israel is guilty in the eyes of God. So with that, let's pick up our current text here in Hosea chapter 4. In Hosea chapter 4, starting in verse 1, it reads, it says, "Hear the word of Yahweh, you children of Israel, for Yahweh brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land." So we see here in the first half of this verse here, Yahweh brings a charge. This is a legal complaint. God, Yahweh Elohim, God is the plaintiff, and the inhabitants of the land, also known as the children of Israel, are the defendants. Well, what is the charge then? What is the charge that God would bring legally before the inhabitants of the land, the children of Israel? Here's the charge. Last part of 4:1. There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. Goes on, read the full legal complaint. So no truth, mercy, or knowledge of God. And also verse 2, by swearing and lying, killing and stealing, and committing adultery. Look at what they do here. They break all restraint. So what's the first thing? What is the cause, if you will? The cause for the charge is the absence of truth, the absence of mercy, and all of those things were done away with, were ignored, and dispatched out of their society, because the first thing was gotten rid of, and that is the knowledge of God in the land. Well, when that happens, and we know truth, knowledge, all of these things originate from God. We're told in Proverbs that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and understanding. So this is the very root of where truth, where mercy, where knowledge comes from, is first with knowing God. So when you ignore that and you set that aside, say, no, I'm not going to pursue knowledge of God, truth, or mercy, well, then that vacuum, as we've seen time and again, that void is going to be filled with something. And what did these ancient Israelites fill it with? They filled it with swearing and lying and killing, stealing, all these other things, committing adultery, ultimately being the very embodiment of that Gomer, the wife that Hosea was commanded to go and take as his wife, the adulteress, the one that showed no restraint, that was only pursuing her most basest desires. Remember, her lovers gave her linen and wine and oil and all of the things that she needed in her daily life, so she thought. So why should there be anything holding me back from getting what I want, what I deserve? You could almost imagine Gomer saying that in her mind. But again, when you eliminate or ignore, suppress until that light is dimmed, if not completely extinguished, when you eliminate the knowledge of God from your mind, well, what you have done is broken all powers that might give you moral restraint. And therefore, with bloodshed upon bloodshed, that verse 2 remains. So there is nothing that would hold you back from trying to attain those which you deem in your own mind as yours, something that you deserve. And boy, if this hasn't changed much in a few thousand years now, do we have more or less knowledge of God in our land? Do we have more or less truth or mercy in our land than we have of swearing, of lying, of killing and stealing and adultery, breaking all restraint? Look at even in our, and this picture has been brought up before, but just in our commercials, in our ad culture, live with no boundaries, just do it. You know all of the taglines and all the things that are, and they're not doing that just to, yeah, you deserve it. All the other things we could go on down the line, but it comes back to the point that why should you withhold anything from yourself? It is yours to have, and you deserve it, exactly like you said, Phil. And it doesn't matter what that is that you're pursuing. Did you commit adultery, commit fornication? Okay, there's one sin, but bloodshed upon bloodshed, those sins are going to keep compounding. And well, with your promiscuity comes pregnancy. And then, well, we got to take care of that little problem. I can't bring a child into this world. So bloodshed upon bloodshed. Well, now murder is just healthcare, right? No, that is the point that we're seeing today is not much new under the sun. We see the Israelites were breaking all restraint in their suppression of their knowledge of God within the land, and that void was filled with this iniquity. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Before you go to 3, the last part of verse 1 and verse 2 remind me of the axiomatic truth of a little light rejected results in greater darkness still. And the people, Israel being a picture of humanity.
Sure.
Here, and of course Gomer being a picture of humanity.
Yeah. Yep.
Israel's unfaithfulness, the rejection of a little bit of light, and the inevitable result is what you see here.
Precisely.
You go into darkness a little more every time you reject the light, and that's what we see.
Hey. Oh, go ahead, Rich. Yep.
Yeah, kind of on the same note, within the church, if you look at Israel, at their time, God's chosen people, they can do anything. God
Sure.
The church is going that route too. Galen and I last summer went to a concert. They started putting this was a Christian concert into the Where You're At movement. And this is basically God will love you no matter where you're at, and which I believe if you mean it correctly.
Right.
But what they mean by that now is no matter how you're living your lifestyle, no matter what you're doing, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. You can be LGBTQ. You can commit murder by killing your children. It doesn't matter. He loves you, and you're his, and everything is good.
Is that similar with that? What's the group? He Gets Us.
Yeah.
Okay, you see those, and like, boy, for a split second, you're like, wow, look at this. There's a great commercial, or they've got a banner right behind home plate at a World Series, whatever it is, and promoting Christ. But then you look more into the organization, and it's like they have the same message as loves you. What? Pardon me, Galen?
The hyper-grace message, which is grace covers it all, and you don't have to change.
Correct, and that is
No offense necessary. And so we see the church going kind of like what Israel had done a number of times with this. this. They say they're God's people, but they sit there and they just move so far away from what God would want from us or for us.
Well, and what leads to this destruction? I'm gonna steal my own thunder. And what leads to this destruction that we're talking about? We see the destruction of Israel. We see the destruction of the church for that was brought about in the church, that they've gone wayward. Well, I'm going to skip ahead, and we're going to have Hosea describe to us and tell us exactly what's the reason for this destruction. I'm going to skip over 3 for now and look right ahead to verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you. Now, we'll get more into this as we come into it contextually here, but that is exactly what Israel did. They thought, like you said, Rich, they are God's special people. They are chosen. Why should we withhold anything from us? And it says there in verse 6, they are not destroyed for complete absence of knowledge. Sure, they gave, we see all through Hosea, we saw it in Amos, you see it all throughout the scriptures. They maintained the pretense of temple worship and serving God and doing things for him, but we're just going to bring in a little bit of this Baal worship. We're just going to bring in a little bit of this, because why should we be restrained from doing that? Well, just like Phil brought up, little light rejected. It's that little rejection of that knowledge leads to your whole-scale destruction, and you are given over because you're rejecting, again, that light of God, accepting in a little bit of error, thinking, God will wink at this. There's no problem accepting this little bit of idol worship in here. Well, that's a futile thinking there, and we've quote this passage often, but it still applies, and that's Romans chapter 1. Why is this judgment on the unrighteous coming? Well, he says there in verse 21 of Romans 1, because although they knew God, so see, there was some knowledge there. They knew God, but they did not glorify him, nor were thankful, but became futile in their hearts. So you see, there was some knowledge, but there was a lack of knowledge because they didn't want to fully pursue him with glorification, with thankfulness. Therefore, their thoughts became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Just as Phil said, they reject it. Okay, you reject the light that I'm giving you, and you're going to try to bring in some of this other darkness. Well, that darkness is going to swallow up your light. Professing to be wise, they became fools. And 3 times in Romans 1, verse 24, 26, and 28. Therefore, God gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves. 26. God gave them up to vile passions. Even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. And then verse 28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. Do you see that there? They didn't even like to read. We still have these remnants of the things that our parents taught us in Sunday school. They want to even forget even that once you are given over to this debased mind. But even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. Again, examples abound in this. Little light rejected results in further and greater darkness still. So we see that here. That is the condition, the present condition in our context of our study of Israel. But it is not immune. Humanity is not immune from this darkening of the mind if we reject the knowledge of God. Let's read on now verse 3. Verse 3, therefore the land will mourn, everyone who dwells there will waste away, with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, even the fish of the sea will be taken away. Again here, God, as we see over and over, God cares about his creation. That's more than even just us, humans, the pinnacle of his creation. No, the land mourns. The land has a response because of our iniquity. We saw that with the very first sin that Adam and Eve brought into this earth, is that also brought death amongst all creation. So now creation, dwelling millennia after death was entered into that ecosystem that was never designed to have death, well, now it is mourning because Everyone experiences this same equalizer of death. Whether it's humans, beasts, birds, or fish, there is an answer for the iniquity in the land. And we see here when iniquity ramps up, well, the destruction of the land and the reason for the land to mourn only increases along with it. Now, verse 4, it says, "Now let no man contend or rebuke another, for your people are like those who contend with the priest." So he's saying here, don't argue here as if you are contending with the priest, who is to be, if in their right and proper role, the appointed mouthpiece of God, if you will, the intermediator between God and man, which we now have, praise God, in Christ Jesus. But imagine contending with him because you think that you are right. How futile. Therefore, verse 5, "Therefore you shall stumble in the day." Well, it's one thing, if you're getting up in the middle of the night, you need to use the restroom or something, and oh, geez, you trip over something at night. Well, okay, that's to be not necessarily expected, but you can be forgiven that. But here, no, they're going to be stumbling around at high noon in broad daylight. This is a picture of how blind and how weakened they will be because of their iniquity. "Therefore you shall stumble in the day. The prophet also shall stumble with you at night, and I will destroy your mother." Again, so we see the stumbling of the people, the stumbling even of the prophet. So all the things that they would they think they could trust, at least in their legs, right? Their legs shouldn't fail them. Okay, again, this is a picture of their societal leadings, but their own devices fail them. Then they go to the prophets, and the prophet fails them. He stumbles with you day or night, doesn't matter which time you're going. But even then, who on this earth should you be able to trust but your mother? And we see here, because of this iniquity, motherhood is a target, and it is a target for destruction. Well, don't we see that as well today? The attack on mothers in this land, for sure. Questions, comments? All right, let's read on now. Again, a great verse, even though it is a terrifying verse, but it is a great and well-known verse here, Hosea 4:6. Already touched on it, but 4:6, it says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge." Again, just like Phil said, this is an act of volition. This is something that they're not like the tribes and the untouched tribes off of some island that don't know. They have never been given the gospel, have never been given the word of God. Well, even though we're told that there's signs in the stars and the seasons, it's hard to reject knowledge when nobody has directly given you that knowledge. But here we're seeing the people who have the least excuses to have no knowledge are saying, "Nope, I'm turning my nose up to it. I'm pushing it away." It's offered to them. It's there, the veritable smorgasbord of knowledge of God, even in just the Old Testament. No, not for me, because they have rejected knowledge. And this is the cause for their destruction. The cause for their destruction is this lack of knowledge, this willful rejection of the offer of knowledge. And because of that rejection, he, as it says here, will reject you from being priest for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. Again, terrifying verse, Hosea 4:6 here. Destruction, but we see what the reason is for. We already went into what the lack of knowledge of God leads to all sorts of unrestrained immorality. But it's going to have deleterious effects on not just your lives, but your children's lives. Not only will your spiritual life fail, okay, you're rejected from being priest, rejected from having communication with me, your God. That is dead if you reject the knowledge of him, because you have forgotten the law of your God. But this has generational effect. I will forget your children. Now, if we wanted to pluck this out here again, the replacement theologians would say, see, God said right here that once judgment comes upon you, I'm going to forget your children, and then I'm going to replace them. Right? That's exactly what you must read into that verse there. Well, no. Again, this is why we teach verse by verse here, and context matters. And we will see all through even this book and every other major and minor prophet in the book Word of God, even when the judgment seems so dark and so impossible for there to be ever a reuniting or a restoration of a people, we see that the promise comes in. There's always a yet. There's always a but. God therefore has mercy because he wants this relationship with Israel, with his chosen people, and he wants that relationship with all of creation. He wants this communion with us. And we know that just as he has this plan offered for us, this plan of salvation, he also has a plan for Israel. So again, he will forget your children, and your children, your future generations, are going to be as if they are forgotten by God. But this is not permanent. Phil?
Previous chapter, verse 5. Last verse of the previous chapter.
Exactly. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return. That's not a maybe. Maybe they'll return. No. Afterward, they shall return and seek Yahweh their God, David their king, and they shall fear Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days. Right? So this is, again, after all of this charge for judgment, and then the judgment that does finally come. In those latter days, after that judgment, there will be restoration. All right. Let's read on now, verse 7 of chapter 4. It says, the more they increased, the more they sinned against me. Well, and if this isn't a common pattern here, the more prosperity they have, the more they increase, the more people that they have, the more sure they get in their numbers and their economy and their military might, and whatever increase it's describing here. It could be crop increase, it could be sheepfold increase, whatever it is. The more they increase, if you're not acknowledging that increase is from God, well, then you're just going to be that pride level in your own heart is going to be pumped up, and once that pride gets pumped up, more propensity to sin against him. And that's exactly what Israel did here. So the more they increase, the more they sinned against me. I will change their glory into shame. Boy, how many things do people glorify in now that should be turned into shame? And frankly, shouldn't be turned into shame. They are shameful. You look at them and you recoil because you're glorifying in this. You think this is a point of pride and glory for you. One day, we're told here, one day they will realize all the things that they thought were glorious are truly shameful, and we can only pray that day comes while there's time yet for them to repent. Verse 8, they eat up the sin of my people. They set their heart on their iniquity. Again, we see how all-consuming this is. The very verbiage of eating up the sin of my people, as if you're sitting down at what Max call that buffet, the pig pen. You go up to the pig pen, the old country buffet, and just pile it on there. Well, this is how they committed their iniquity here. They're setting their heart on iniquity. That heart. There's every desire in their being is being focused on how can I commit more of this iniquity, and they might not. I say that as you ask rhetorically the question, how can I commit more iniquity? No one in the midst of sin is saying, boy, how can I go sin more? No, it's this setting their heart on. It's steering their desires on. And, the heart is desperately wicked and deceitful. in its own context, in its own power. So these desires of their heart are going to they're going to be deceitful. And you're going to say, "Oh, of course you can go and have this. Oh, surely you shall not die." Sound familiar? Again, this is setting their desires because they have first rejected God, and then their desires are left to their own devices to seek it on what they want, and everything else be damned. This is again the context of this unrepentant Israel and unrepentant humanity in general, eating up sin. Verse 9, it says, "And it shall be like people, like priests. So I will punish them for their ways and reward them for their deeds." So we see here this societal cancer of wanton iniquity. It wasn't just relegated to the to the lower classes. They can't help themselves but live in sin, or even the upper classes. But no, it's all people, and yes, even the priests, even those who I'm sure had all the pomp and circumstance, thinking that again they're the priest class. What could they can't do anything wrong. We are the very mouthpiece between God and man. How could we commit iniquity? Well, we see here, it shall be just like people, so like priests. And this is why, as we will see in future studies here, that the primary blame and the primary blame that God puts on this condition of Israel is on the religious class, specifically the religious leaders, because they were the first that did not shepherd their people properly. They did not give them full knowledge of God because, maybe these teachings were a little hard. The people don't like to hear these teachings on sin. Therefore, we'll just ignore that and we'll only teach this part of God. Well, in doing that, they are withholding knowledge of God, and that is why the people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. Questions, comments? Rich?
Yeah, on this whole society thing, and I'm sadder and sadder as I look at the world each day. Work with a young lady who I've had a conversation a number of times about abortion. And she goes through these real strong mood changes back and forth. And she opened up to me a week or so ago that not too long ago that she went through an abortion. And she says, I go through these bouts of depression and I go through these bouts of crying and everything else over. But the doctor who did the abortion told me that was normal. And I said, it is normal when you lose a child to go through bouts of depression and mourning and everything else. And she says, yes, but my doctor said that I should then remember the good that came out of the procedure. And this is our society today, is they'll go through it, and God works on their heart and they tug on them. And they have to remember the good that the society is selling them over the importance of what God is providing.
Yeah, remember how good that bait tastes when you still got the hook in your mouth, right? That bait still tastes good, right? Even though you're hooked, you're completely caught. It shows you how what being given over to a debased mind can be. It's, oh yeah, we murdered your child, but yeah, think of the good. It's disgusting. It really is viscerally disgusting. But we shouldn't be surprised by that. Because this is humanity.
She said probably 20 times, it's normal for me to feel this way, and I didn't do anything wrong. Well, there's a reason she's feeling that way. It's because, first of all, she hasn't realized she did something.
Yeah. Yep. That's the sad, anecdotal, but very explanatory example of what our society is, what the barometer is on our society today. So let's go on. Get a couple more verses in here. We got a few minutes left. Verse 10. Verse 10 says, "For they shall eat, but not have enough." Boy, does that sound like our country today. All consuming, but never that stomach's never full, and the clothes never fit. They shall eat, but never be full. They shall never have enough. They shall commit harlotry, but not increase. Well, do you see promiscuity and sexual deviancy rampant today? Yes. Do we see birth rates decreasing? Yes. So we're committing harlotry, but we're not increasing. Gee, what does this not spell that we are right in the throes of judgment? Of course it does. Because why? Because they have ceased obeying Yahweh. The pattern doesn't change. You know, it's not like, oh boy, well there's this set of things that we can do that we could screw up, or this set of things. No, it's very clear cut. Don't reject God. Don't reject the knowledge of Him, and you won't have these problems. But again, humans are futile and easily allured by the devil and allured by his minions. And unfortunately, too many reject the light of God and eat but never be full, commit harlotry but never increase. So we are gonna leave it up right there. We've got a minute left, but here's a pretty good breaking point. Are there any other questions, comments on Hosea 4? Kayleen.
Yeah, I see that last verse about eating and never being, and never being satisfied. It's the same thing as consumerism today, keeping up with
Sure.
the Joneses.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, I got this, but I want that. Oh, I have this, but I want that. And it's just completely shifting the focus off of God and off of what is necessary and what is right and what is true. And it's completely about covetousness.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, not that there's anything inherently wrong. I'm going to go off on a 30-second tangent, but not that there's anything inherently wrong about those Stanley Cups, right? But once that what's the word? The zeitgeist is out there, right? The mind worm is out there that, okay, these are the cups to have. Well, then you see people going out and beating up people in a Target to get them. They're buying 40 or 50 of these tumbler cups to drink their water out of. And again, it's just consumerism breeds consumerism. And if you're just buying something just for the sake of, well, this is the new thing, I have to have it. And not only do I have to have it in every color of my wardrobe. That is consuming and never having enough. And that's a great point. It doesn't have to be food. It doesn't have to be, it could be time. Look at you can, I remember as a kid, you were happy to have your 2 or 3 cartoon shows or whatever after school. And okay, that was it. Then you went and played, you read a book, whatever. Well, now we have unlimited streamable things to watch, but you can never find anything to watch. You're never satisfied with the. So again, it doesn't matter what the product is. If all you're working on is feeding the stomach, well, that stomach's never going to be full if you're not filling it with God.
You still don't get your homework done, right?
I still got missing assignments. All right, Brother Rich, would you close with a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for pointing out to us things that we need to search within ourselves on a daily basis, to look at ourselves, correct ourselves in our direction, to look more towards you than those things in the world. So thank you for your word. Thank you for your book. Thank you for what you would have for us, and that you love us so much that you would provide for us the answers that we need for a better life. I thank you for the teacher and the time he put into his lesson today. I thank you for the everything that you give us. From the smallest to the largest things, Lord, you give us what we need. And for that, we thank you. Lord, I just pray that you watch over each and every one here as they go about their day and into their next lessons. Praise the name of Jesus' name. Amen.